Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Welcome to My Dad's a Lawyer.
A podcast talking about life, law, and other shit.
I'm Noah Mittman, the son and a lawyer.
And I'm Brian Mittman, the dad and a lawyer as well.
Nice. We've recorded a couple episodes so far, but we haven't released anything yet. We were waiting for these fancy headphones and our microphones to come in to make sure we had pristine sound quality.
And hopefully it is actually recording, but you know what? That's why I have the young guy working
It
with me on this
it
podcast.
it says we're recording, so hopefully it saves. All right. So let's get right into it today. First off, we both love golf. We're big time golfers, and we've been blessed this year with pretty warm weather this fall, wouldn't you say?
Well, I'd agree with you that we've had pretty warm weather during the week. I had quite a busy fall and,
Yes.
wanted to do some Saturday, Sunday golfing, but it was more like rowing a rowboat than golfing.
I know it's been crazy. I did get out though last weekend, and I must say, I'm not a great golfer and I lose a lot of golf balls, but I felt I lost a lot more because the leaves are just all over the place. It's impossible to find your ball if you're not on the fairway.
Yeah, well, I'm waiting for the person to create the GPS golf ball. I mean, I think it would kill the golf ball company, but
You're
the
right.
GPS golf ball would be perfect.
Right. It's like find my iPhone for a golf ball.
You know what? Find my golf ball. I like that.
Find my golf
The
ball.
eyeball.
That's we might be able to invent that and retire as lawyers.
Nice, 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 nice.
All right.
All right, son. So what's going on?
Not much. I just actually launched my You Know a Lawyer website. For those that know, my Instagram handle is You Know a Lawyer. Because my first name Noah. We actually came up with that while we were golfing. That was one of my most creative things I've ever come up with. But I actually just launched my website, youknowalawyer.com. Just a short landing page just to get my name out there, start advertising for myself to try to get my own cases and, build my brand and build my own business.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing because again, as your third generation lawyer in the chain here, I'm a second generation lawyer, and I remember when I started with your grandfather. It was really interesting because my version was getting out every single night of the week, going to one, two, three events, meeting doctors, meeting lawyers, going to bar association events, doing all those things that you had to do, doing some advertising, none of this online stuff. And
Yeah.
obviously, I love the online stuff, and you've really come out of the gate hard with some great, great stuff because you know a lawyer. Whenever you're in trouble, you know a
No
lawyer.
lawyer.
Absolutely
Exactly.
fantastic.
Yeah, I do enjoy the in-person events though. I try to get out at least, once a month, once or twice a month maybe to these in-person events. And as you know, I actually host my own networking events. We're trying to get together a holiday party for that, but it's a little tough. There's a lot of holiday parties already on the schedule.
Well, remember, you can always do the anti-holiday party. Like instead of doing a Thanksgiving thing or a Christmas thing, just do it on a completely random day that people don't expect.
Right, like National Peanut Day or something
Hey,
like
why
that.
not? Just as long as you're not allergic.
October 26th was actually National Noah Day.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Punny.
Yeah. Okay, so that brings us to aside from bad dad jokes, the old guy question. This is where I get to ask you, Noah, a question about your generation. So
Okay.
today's question is about the news. So when, again, I grew up, even as a young adult, one of the biggest things when I used to commute to the city was they had these gigantic bins outside all the trains that would arrive at Grand Central Station. And everyone would throw their newspaper in there. And I'm talking two or three gigantic bins because everyone read the newspaper. Or when you were like done, you'd look at your seatmate and be like, "Hey, dude, do you want this newspaper?"
Do you
And
want to trade newspapers?
and people were like weird because, right, whether you read the Daily News or the Post or the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, there were different attitudes to the opinions to the newspapers, and some people would be grumpy, some people just wanted to consume news, but that's how we consume news aside from the 6 o'clock and the 10 o'clock evening news. So like, if you're going to get news today, I know there's a gazillion things on social media. Trust me, I try to follow it. Like, what is it? Where do you go to try to get real news?
Okay, so the two main sources I get my news is Instagram and Twitter. I follow all these athlete accounts, sport accounts, I follow news accounts, and they're very up to date, post within seconds, minutes, hours of events happening. So I mostly consume my media and my news from social media, Twitter and Instagram. However, I also do use Apple News because sometimes I do want to read actual news articles because the social media news isn't really articles. They'll, link something to the post or something to get you to go to their website to read the article. But honestly, when I'm on social media, I'm just looking for a quick 30-second read. So I read the caption, get the headline. It tells you briefly what it was about or who was traded or what the score was or what's happening in the world. And then you move on to the next one. The news cycle these days are so fast. It could be an hour later and I'm going on there and there's a completely different news story that's captivating the entire world. Um, but I also do use Apple News on my phone. I never read print news ever. But when I want to actually read articles, usually at night when I get home from work, I usually scroll through Apple News just to get some main headlines and read some main news stories.
Been using Apple News as well, which I find pretty good. I think the biggest challenge for me is I like holding something in my hands, and
Yeah,
sometimes that phone is like, it's like too small,
right.
you know.
Well,
Yeah, so
sometimes I use my iPad, which is great. I don't know if you have an iPad, but the
yeah,
iPad's great for Apple News because it's like a Kindle almost, where you can read, full articles. And I do like to hold something in my hand when I read, and that is my phone.
nice, nice. Well, thank you for helping an old guy better understand what's going on.
I know you try to keep up with it. I always say, and I've been saying this for the years, for an older person, you're not too old, but for an older person that's
Mm.
older than me, you are very, very with it when it comes to technology. You always have the new technology. I remember when we were younger, you used to have, didn't you have the first iPhone or was it the first
I
iPod,
actually had one of the very first iPhones, and had
first
I known
iPhone?
then what it would be, I wish I had kept it. I remember uh, walking downtown. We had our offices on Canal and Broadway, and I had to go downtown to, I think, meet a client or something. So I was walking, and I walked down past 225, which is the old, I think, transportation building in Lower Manhattan by City Hall, and there was this line. I'm like, what is this? And there was Apple Store. It's like, what are you guys doing? Oh, we're getting the phone, right? Okay. And I think a few weeks later, I was like, oh my God, I gotta get one of these things. And I'll never forget having the phone and being like, what is this app thing? And nobody really understood it at the time. Like, what do you mean I have to go to an app store and get apps? That's stupid. It doesn't come with, like, the games already on it. Right? I had a BlackBerry. I had my little games
Right, right. Yeah. I used to have a BlackBerry too. They would have that game, what is it called, where you
with
scroll
the
back.
bricks.
Yeah, where
Um,
you break the bricks and the ball bounces
yeah.
across the screen. That was great, riding home on the bus in high school and stuff, playing that game. But now, I mean, you could play Call of Duty, you could play NBA on the phone. It's really crazy how far it's come.
Yeah, pretty amazing stuff.
All right, our next topic. Let's get into some funny stories about our profession. So, as you know, vocational experts are big in your field. You do workers' compensation. I do personal injury. We deal with injured workers, people injured in accidents, and a lot of times they're making lost wage claims where they are claiming they can't work. So you send them to a vocational rehab expert who is somebody who can figure out what jobs they can still do, what jobs they can't do, how many hours they can work. And they go through all these limitations the client has and they determine whether or not they can work and what jobs they can do. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest and most important thing for our listeners to understand is, we're in the legal fields where it's really known as the medical legal fields. And the idea is, how has an injury or an illness impacted somebody's ability to work, continue working, stop working, and start working. And one of the ways we do that is by hiring experts who will come in and say, all right, this person has a high school degree and has worked as a laborer, heavy laborer for 9 months, or sorry, 9 years. And this is all that they know. And these are the things based upon their injuries they could or could not do. So it's pretty, pretty important to understand that. And it helps kind of frame the picture because even though we all are like, oh, you can do it, you can't do it, having a quote expert
Right.
help you and tell you what's going on is super important.
So back to the funny story about the vocational expert. I had one client, we told them we were sending them to a vocational expert, and he said his voice was fine. It's like, no, not
No,
exactly like that.
nothing like the a vocal expert. You know,
Right.
you've been practicing for a couple of years. I have a few more stories since I've been practicing for at least a few decades, and I'll never forget. One of the things I think we all do as people is you put your trust in experts. Oh,
Of
it's a
course.
doctor. So what does the doctor say? Oh, it's the lawyer. What does the lawyer say? Oh, it's the accountant. What does the accountant say? We don't ask enough questions. So in the world of doctors, oh, it's the doctor, right? I was always taught when you're cross-examining a doctor, you're never going to win on the medical, right? They spent all those years going to medical school, so you have to ask the questions in a way to better understand what's going on. So we had this doctor one time. I'm sitting in a workers' compensation hearing, watching some other attorney do their hearing, and Dr. Frank Folk, who passed away, I think last year, big strapping guy would show up at the workers' comp board in a big white lab coat with Dr. Folk and his stethoscope and
He dressed the
real
part.
real funny dude, real funny dude. And he's sitting there and the attorney's asking questions. All of a sudden he goes, "Oh, the claimant, he's AFU." And everyone's looking at the doctor like, "AFU?" Right? It's a back injury. What's AFU? So the judge says, "Dr. Folk, what do you mean by AFU?" "Oh, he's all fucked up." And I mean, I fell off of the bench laughing so hard because
Uh,
here's a doctor who I expect all these fancy things from, and
right.
he was just like a regular guy. He's like, "Oh, it got messed up."
Yeah. That is one thing I realize now because I do have some friends that are teachers. Like when I was younger, I used to think teachers, didn't have a life outside of their profession or, lawyers didn't do anything other than dress up in suits and go to court. But as I got older, I realized that they're just regular people like us and, they have their senses of humor, they have their social life outside of work, and sometimes they intersect with each other and it causes
Yeah,
for
no,
some funny interactions.
well, I mean, listen, I think that's kind of part of the basis of what you and I are doing on this podcast is that, talking about life, law, and other stuff, other shit. Because the reality is, law intersects with life. Everyone talks
Right.
about kill all the lawyers. Everyone talks about all this stuff, but what do? I hate lawyers. Well, when they need something done, they run to a lawyer
Right.
because every aspect of what we do, our society is a society based on laws, norms, and things like that. And all this stuff intersects, and people don't think about it until they need it.
I know.
And it's amazing.
And now that I've been in the field for at least 5 or 6 years now, been a lawyer for about 2 years now. Now, I'm walking down the street and I'm thinking, oh, violation. Oh, that's a law about how high the arch needs to be, or whether or not there's a handrail, stuff like that. I just think very differently now about my life and just living a daily life because of all the laws. And now I realize how they intersect with our lives.
And that's just in your area of specialty. There are
Right.
lawyers who have never come across what we do. And you'll sit there and you'll have a conversation. And they'll be like, wait, what do you mean you can bring a lawsuit for that? Oh, wait, you have a case for that? I didn't know. I'll send, things like that. So it's pretty amazing because you just never know. We get phone calls all the time. Like, I don't even know how we get these, people reaching out to us where we're clearly handling disability and injuries. and they're asking me these like crazy questions. Like here's a great story. We one time had a person call up and they were insistent. They wanted to sue the grocery store. Like, well, what happened? Oh my God, what an injury. I said, what happened? They bought like a cream cheese, and when they opened it up, there was mold.
And they wanted to sue.
I said, well, you could sue if you want, but you might just want to return it.
Right. And I'm sure they'll take it back.
But
All
yeah,
right.
listen, we joke about it, but there's a lot of serious
Oh,
parts
I'm
to it
sure.
as well. So
And there's also areas of law that I have no idea about, that if someone came to me with a question, I wouldn't even know what to say. So, it's good to know people in various areas of law because, like you said, everything's governed by laws.
absolutely.
All right. So let's move on to our next segment. Let's talk about how the Eagles are doing right now. So just a little background for everybody. Um, Brian grew up outside of Philadelphia. I grew up in New York. So our sport fandom is a little bit mixed. I grew up a big time 76ers and Eagles fan. I also grew up a big time Yankee fan. I would say the Yankees are my favorite sports team, partially because, a young kid growing up in New York, idolizing Derek Jeter. But I do have that Philly side from you. So I just wanted to get your take on how the Eagles season's going right now. They're the only team that's 7-1 in the league.
Well, I got to tell you, having grown up as a long suffering Eagles fan, these last bunch of years have been absolutely amazing. Um, I think what's exciting but also nerve-wracking about this year's Eagles are they clearly are a fantastic team, right?
Right.
But like any other professional sport, any given Sunday, you never know who can win or they don't
Yes.
make they're not making these games easy as a fan.
No, no, definitely not. Very close games.
Yeah, but they're a solid deep team, which is the difference. And
Right.
it's really, really exciting. They've made some acquisitions this year. They're not going crazy. They're trying to stick to their game plans, and it's really, really exciting.
I know. I mean, AJ Brown just had, I think, 6 straight games of 125 or more
Yeah, I
yards. And,
think that's a
everyone's.
record, NFL
Yeah,
record or something.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's definitely been an exciting time, and hopefully the Yankees can get it together this off season and put together a winning product on the field.
Yeah, I was, the World Series just ended, and I watched some of it, and it was exciting. But it's just not the same when it's your team, not
I
your
know.
team, right? And especially when your team has been out of it for a while. Like I've been out of baseball mode for 2 months now, at
I
least,
know.
and I love baseball. I
Yeah,
and
you've been a season ticket holder for 20 years
great,
now.
at least, yeah. So you know, but it's exciting. And as a family, for those that you don't know, we have another. Noah has a brother. I have another son. So the boys trip each year. We do a Eagles game. Last year, Josh goes to school in Denver, so Noah and I flew out to Denver to watch the Broncos play the Eagles.
That
Um,
was last year, right?
that was last year, yeah.
Okay.
And then this year we're heading down to Philadelphia to see the Eagles play the Bills on the Sunday after Thanksgiving. Going to get to see the family and do the boys thing. So it's always a nice, exciting
Yes.
tradition to have in the family.
Yes, and we all just got matching Kelly Green jerseys, which I'm excited to wear for the game we're going to, where the Eagles will also be wearing their Kelly Green jerseys, which are great. I've been loving the throwback jerseys this year in the
Yeah.
NFL.
Yeah, I like the whole throwback idea. I remember when those jerseys came out originally.
All right, moving on to our next topic. It was just Halloween on Tuesday. We're recording this on Friday, but we figured we'd stay in the Halloween spirit. And there's a lot of debate about Halloween candy. And there's specifically a lot of debate about candy corn. So I got to ask you, do you like candy corn?
I love candy corn.
I'm definitely your son because I love candy corn too. I can't eat too much of it, only a couple
Oh,
pieces at a time because it's very sugary. But I think it's a good candy. You eat it once a year. It only comes out during Halloween. It's not like I'm eating it throughout the year.
well, and speaking of Instagram and social media BS, I saw something where there's something going around on social media that candy corn kills 500,000 people a year. I think that's a little on
Yeah,
the BS meter.
Yeah, that's back to our talk about consuming news and media. That's another thing about the social media news because it's not always these verified news sources. It's a lot of firsthand journalism from people, just average people that are, tweeting about these news stories. So you don't always get the most accurate news, but sometimes you also get news faster than others. It's like, Adam Schefter breaking NFL news all the time. He tends to be accurate, but sometimes there are stories he puts out there that aren't necessarily the truth because, it's all about getting the news out the fastest and the first.
Yeah, well, I think that's the speed and the rapid speed of the news cycle is what a challenge is because the initial stories can be accurate for being initial, but they're also completely unknown because they're not vetted yet. So it takes time. And
Yeah,
then, your first impression is, oh, you read that story and that's what you believe. You moved on. Now you're dealing with something completely different, even though it turns out that first story was BS.
right. Right. All right. So we're coming to the end of this episode, but I noticed that you unblurred your screen. You gave everyone a little preview of what my bedroom as a child looked like. Do you want to give a
Yeah,
little background on that?
sure. I didn't realize that I had blurred it. So I'm in Noah's former bedroom, and I laugh because when I went to college, my parents turned my bedroom into like a lounge. They left the bed in there, but Noah had moved out a couple of years back, and we had a major flood in the basement. And my wife and I, Stephanie and I, Noah's mom, shared an office in the basement. So when we redid the basement, I turned that office into her office, and I decided to turn Noah's bedroom into a study because you can see some beautiful built-in shelves here that were here. It's obviously gorgeous wallpaper and carpet. Um, and the bed was off to my right here. And now I have a couple nice leather chairs, and I've turned it into a study that I've always wanted. So I would like to thank Noah for setting the pace and having a beautiful room.
You're you're welcome. It's funny because right now I'm the only one that lives close to you within driving distance. I'm in Stamford, Connecticut. You live in Harrison. It's only a 20-25 minute drive without traffic, but I'm the only one to have their bed removed from their room. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, you don't need it. Come on.
Yeah, that is true. And I guess let's finish off with giving a little bit background about our family. Do we want to
Yeah,
get into that? I'm one
yeah.
of four children. We have a very large family, broken up, two boys, two girls. Noah, the oldest. Then we have Zoe, who lives in Chicago, Sophie, who lives in Israel, and Josh, who's out in Denver.
Yeah, and we also have two dogs, Stella and Sadie, as well as Stephanie and myself. And Stephanie and I met in college, so we're college sweethearts, and
Very cute.
wouldn't trade it for the world. We joked we wanted a large family, and we were thinking about a fifth kid, but instead we put a swimming pool in,
Okay.
which was a fantastic thing to
It
keep the
works for
kids
me.
busy.
Yeah, definitely. And I always tell people when I talk about the family, we're such an even family and we're easily divisible. So you have the boys and the girls, two sons and the father, two daughters and the mother. But you also, when it comes to the kids, you have the two older kids, the two younger kids. You have the two blonde hair kids, you have the two brown hair kids, and you have the two boys and two girls. And it's funny because the brown I think the brown hair and the blonde hair is the best way to divide the family because the two blonde hair children have the most similar personalities and the two brown hair children also have the most similar
Oh,
personalities.
Steph and I are always like, your mom and I are always like, oh, the brownies and the blondies.
Right,
That's
exactly.
that's how we deal with it, and it certainly is a lot of fun and a lot of stories over the years, as crazy as it can be, because it's not just four kids; it's four kids in 5.5 years. So
Right. We're all
our
very close.
household has been very, very energetic.
Yes, to say the least. All right. Do you have any other topics that you want to touch on before we wrap up today?
No, I think that's about it. I enjoy spending some time with you outside of work or family events and doing
Of
these
course.
podcasts, and I look forward to diving deeper and having a good time.
Of course. Like I said before, I'm Noah Mittman. Follow me on all socials at You Know a Lawyer down below.
And I'm Brian Mittman. Follow me on all socials at the Disability Guys. down below or over up top or over here, wherever it is.
I'll work on that part. You just worry about recording the video.
Excellent.